islets, okay, or we call them also as islets of Langerhans. Okay, so these islets of Langerhans, they will secrete the pancreatic hormones, and those pancreatic hormones will go directly into the blood. Okay, so pancreatic hormones, they go directly into the blood. There are different kinds of pancreatic hormones, like there is glucagon, there is insulin. These are the pancreatic hormones which are secreted by the pancreas. Pancreas is having two functions. One is endocrine function, second one is exocrine function. Endocrine and exocrine. But this function which we are stating here is which type of function? Endocrine function. Okay. So in endocrine function, the hormones will directly go into the blood. Okay. So in our pancreas there are almost 1 to 2 million pancreatic islets. Okay. These islets contain three main types of the pancreatic these hormone secreting cells. First is alpha cells, which will secrete the glucagon hormone. Second one is beta cells. Almost 75% of beta cells are present, which will secrete insulin hormone, and these cells are almost 75% in number. Okay. And third cells are delta cells, which secrete a hormone which is called as somatostatin, or we call it as inhibiting hormone, also GH hormone. Okay. So this somatostatin, this is generally produced by the hypothalamus. What it does, it inhibits the secretion of three things: one, insulin, glucagon, and growth hormone. So it controls both the insulin and the glucagon. Okay. So now, main function of what insulin does in our body. What are the normal levels? It's 3.5 to 8 millimole per liter. That is the normal function. Okay. So insulin, what it does in our body, it decreases blood glucose levels. That is the main function of the insulin. Okay. And glucagon will increase the blood glucose levels. Okay. So like I will explain to the diagram, we have already explained it. So what happens that in our blood, there is presence of, whenever we take a meal, so for example this is the blood, whenever we take any kind of a meal, so what will happen? For example, the glucose will reach into the blood. So this is the example, this is the glucose. So glucose reaches into the blood. At the same time, pancreas will secrete insulin. So this insulin will go into the blood. This is the insulin. Okay, this triangular shape is insulin. And already we have presence of glucose. Now in our blood vessels, we have presence of both insulin as well as the glucose. Okay. So what is the function of the insulin? It decreases the blood glucose levels. How it will decrease the blood glucose levels? For example, this is the cell. Okay. And this cell, every cell in our body will be having the insulin receptors. This is the insulin receptor, for example. When this insulin will act on the insulin receptor, it acts on the insulin receptor, it causes opening of transporters. For example, there is one kind of transporter which is called as the GLUT transporter. So when the insulin acts on the insulin receptor, this GLUT transporter will be opened and the glucose will move into the cell. And by this way, the concentration of glucose in our blood will be decreased. Okay, this is how the insulin acts in our body. Now there can be one thing which is called as the insulin resistance. What happens in the insulin resistance? Our body cells are resistant to the insulin. Okay, so that means insulin will come into the blood, but your cells will not be able to accept this insulin. Because of that, the glucose levels in your blood will increase. So that is called as the insulin resistance. Okay. Now insulin has important functions, like first I told you, it will activate glucose transfer mechanism. That was the first activity. Second one, glucogenesis. What is glucogenesis? It will convert the glucose into glycogen. Okay, that is the second important function of insulin. Third is it will increase the uptake of amino acids by the cells. Now fourth is lipogenesis, means synthesis of the fatty acids. Okay, and the next one is glycogenolysis, means it will convert the glycogen to glucose. Okay, glycogen will be converted into the glucose. That is one more function of the insulin. Okay, so these all are the functions of the insulin. Now after that is second one, glucagon. Glucagon has just the opposite effect as that of the insulin. That means it will increase the blood glucose levels by first glycogenolysis. What is glycogenolysis? Glycogen will be converted into glucose. Second, gluconeogenesis. So these are the two important functions of the glucagon, which are just opposed to the insulin. So in our body, both insulin and glucagon are present, which are both secreted by pancreas. Okay.